welcome back to the rest of the story. Well, I figured I'd take you guys along for the ride. You guys could see the trip I have to make up to the main farm and back from hauling corn the other day. Now, this really isn't, well, you're not going to do this being an inexperienced driver. Starting right off the bat, going down my driveway here, giving you an example of what's all going on. I have the four-wheel drive locked in full time. I'm running about 10th gear on a 19-speed power shift, and I believe it was the wagon load after this one. It did push me down the driveway a little bit. I was skidding ever so slightly. You can see the rear tire tracks that they are kind of digging into dirt a little bit. This wagon is why we went ahead and put the extra weight on the 76 last fall. What was it? The two wheel weights on the rear rims and 400 pounds of suitcase weights on the front of the tractor. Now, when I'm down at the bottom of the driveway, I disengage the mechanical front wheel drive altogether. And I don't know if you can really see me shifting. There we go. I'm shifting through all the gears up to road gear 19, one at a time. If you don't do that, and I am pulling a very full loaded load of corn, with this tractor, if you skip a gear, say if I am in 12th gear and I go to 14th or 15th, the tractor will shift right from 12th to 13th to 14th to 15th with no buildup in the engine at all. And this whole road up until the top of the hill here is one really just long gradual climb for anybody that hasn't ever come to the farm day. And the sooner I can get to road gear without bogging the tractor down, the better, because momentum is great in situations like this. Now, the tractor is running about 140 horsepower. We just dynoed it at the beginning of the summer, and that is at the PTO. It handles really well as far as pulling up this hill. I run the tractor down to about 1500 RPMs. It maxes out at about 2250. And you really can't tell we're slowing down yet, but you can see the driveway coming up on our right. That was kind of a visual indicator as to when I would start worrying about having to shift down, or when I would usually have to. Now, I got really fortunate this time around. I didn't have to shift down below 17th gear. So right about there, unless I already shifted. I didn't see it. I must have at this point, because I never got this far past that driveway without having to shift down. But I would typically shift down to 18th gear, because if you go from 18th to 17th, even when you're running wide open going down the road, it does jerk the tractor fairly hard in the transmission, shifting everything around. And I really don't want to do that with the full load of corn behind me. The tractor and everything kind of jerking the wagon and everything around really isn't something I want to do, especially on an uphill slope. Now, I did have some issues with the wagon. It had nothing to do with going up and down the road, but I did have a pin come loose, and I had to hit that with the air hammer to get it back in. It's amazing how something that you can't get in with a hammer, or hardly get in with the air hammer, and there I just shifted up again. Typically, by the time I get to the top of the hill, before this driveway on the right again, I'm usually going back into 19th gear. The tractors were starting to go back downhill, and we're just getting momentum with all of that wagon pushing me down the hill. I get up to about 25.5 miles an hour at right around 2250. It really doesn't over rev too much in this situation. But the pin in that wagon, it's amazing how something that you couldn't, even with the use of air tools, you can hardly get back in, was able to migrate back out of where it should be by itself. And that's just how much weight is being put on it when you're filling those wagons up, because it's what the wagon it's what the center of the wagon is connected to the frame with. Now, the sides of the wagon, it does have 4 points on the edges of the wagon. This wagon Had a bunch of work done to it by the previous owner. It has a bunch of electrical wires and everything on it. They put a lot of work into it. There were two wagons for sale. When Dad bought this one, he bought the better one of the two, and he was kind of regretting not buying the second one. Granted, we're not really set up to pull two or anything like that, but it would be nice for soybeans. More times than not, and I'm sure you guys will see it. Um, Side note here, you can definitely tell I'm using my turn signals, especially on the highway here. I got really lucky. I didn't have too many issues where I actually had to come to a full stop, because normally I have to pull over to the neighbor's driveway right to the right and let traffic pass me. The only time I ever had to do that when I was meeting traffic coming down the road. And this gets a little tricky too, pulling into the driveway, because I can't pull it in 19th gear. I have to shift down to about 15th, but trying to get it timed right every time you're coming into the driveway can be kind of tricky, depending on where cars are around you. Some drivers are worse than others. I think everyone is pretty well aware of that. Some drivers will literally drive up underneath your back tire if you're not careful. And it really wasn't all that soft. It was a little muddy right early in the morning, because the ground did dry up. But I did have the front wheel assist back on coming in the driveway. I didn't say that. And that is a real-time drive back to the farm. Just under 7 minutes. I didn't edit anything out. This is real life, or real time. And you can definitely tell the wagon's empty this time around. The camera is magnetically mounted to the front of the wagon. I thought you guys would get an appreciation. I don't think I did any videos like this last fall. You can thank Herschel, my sponsor, for sending this camera mount up. It's the 2 heavy magnet mount. Works great. I use it in pretty much any place that I can, especially with any amount of metal. It's fairly secure as long as what it's attached to is fairly stable. So you guys can thank him for having some of these awesome videos I'm able to do, because last year, anybody that's been around since the beginning knows that the camera I was using last year, the video quality was so much worse, and I really couldn't get as many of the shots that I can now. Smaller cameras really makes a big difference, especially since I can carry it around in my pocket anymore. But what was I saying there earlier? I can't remember. All right, moving on. Well, as far as the 7600 goes, it does a great job being a road runner. She's earned her keep around here. I don't imagine really selling her off or trading it off for anything that comes to mind. She needs a little bit of work done to her. She's got an oil leak here or there, but nothing life-threatening. We can always daydream here. I was asked what would I ever upgrade tractors to or anything else like that. Well, I don't really think I'd upgrade tractors, at least not at this point, because right now the more tractors we could get around the farm, the better. Like even another chore tractor like this one, so like in the summer, something with 540. Dad, Ryan, and I all could be doing something between the 40/20 cultivating and somebody cutting hay, and during the summer, usually one could be on the brush cutter or the rhino or whatever, and cutting grass or clearing pastures out, because our cattle herd is growing. It's gradually growing, I'm happy to say, and we're going to have a little bit more of a focus on the beef cows here in the upcoming years. I have not given up my plans to grow my beef herd. I would like to buy a bunch of beef heifers yet. I just haven't really gotten around to it, and just seeing where things line up here in the next couple months, especially going into winter. I think somebody told me that cattle prices are actually going to be going down here the way things are going. Cheap corn makes cheap cattle. I heard that the other day, because when corn is cheap and farmers don't want to give it away, they end up feeding their cattle heavier than what they normally would, so they put even more weight on them, and it destroys the cattle market. So I guess I can see where he's coming from. Uh, One instance, potentially two instances in the past, I know what he's talking about. So I don't know. When everybody else is selling, when you're interested in being a buyer, that's the best time to sell, or best time to buy, is when everybody else is panic selling. If you're looking down the road in the long run, I mean, if I get a beef herd going again at my age, I'll have it for another 40, 50 years. But the thing is, I'm trying to find quality too. I don't just want a bunch of junk cattle. But another philosophy on that is that even if the cows are of lower quality, if you can get quality genetics from your bull and you start culling out with decent calves, or you start getting quality calves out of these older cows with better genetics from your bulls, and you can start rotating them out and culling out the older cows and keeping your heifers and everything else like that and grow your herd. Uh, I know I've talking to older farmers, other farmers really helps. Knowledge is power, and don't ever think you can't really talk to other people, other farmers, to see how they did it. What I just described as far as older cows and a better genetics bull, that is a scenario that a local farmer said that he did himself, and it made a lot of sense. So I don't know. Quick side note again, I think I trailed off there. As far as replacing the 76, no. Uh, Something to complement it. Realistically, anything from like a 4440, a 4430, narrow it up and use it for another cultivating tractor. Anything like up to like a 7520, 7330, 7530 would be awesome. But we got to keep our head out of the clouds too when you're talking about stuff like that. So with that, take care, take it easy, keep in touch.